We'll just give it a little bit longer for some people to join us. I think we've got quite a few on at the moment, but we'll just be polite and give some other people the opportunity.
Chair, everybody that I think was immediately waiting to come in has now been admitted, so I think we can make a start.
Okay. I'd just like to welcome everybody this morning. I think we've got a very interesting and packed agenda that we're going to discuss this morning, which will cover lots of the areas of advanced manufacturing that we all have an interest in within Cumbria. We all want to try and develop the business and develop advanced manufacturing to stimulate the economy and to stimulate our own businesses. And the only way you can really do that is to start by helping ourselves and working together. I'm going to hand over to Joe, who's going to say a few words, and then we're going to hear some very interesting words from Juergen Maier. So Joe, if you'd like to take over.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Well, firstly, on behalf of Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership, absolutely delighted that you've been able to join us today. As John's already said, we have got a fabulous set of speakers, all of whom will be introduced properly and formally before they give their actual input. But really wanted to talk about, firstly, the agenda for the day. And as always, is my role in life. I get all of the housekeeping points. So also we'll go through the housekeeping and how we manage it. So Maisie, in terms of turning to the agenda, so we can just talk people through what to expect. Okay, so we're going to lead off with our keynote speech from Juergen Maier. And as I said, I will introduce Juergen formally. We're then going to hear from Tom and Alan from STFC around smart factories and emerging technologies. You'll all be very pleased to know that we've actually built in a comfort break. And it's a fairly lengthy comfort break, because what we've recognised from such events is that people do have other things going on. Everyone's extremely busy. They may need to answer a couple of emails, grab themselves a loo break, a cuppa, and also catch up on any urgent calls. So we're going to give a sort of 15-minute break before we come back with BAE Systems Submarine Supply Chain. We're delighted to have Simon Lee with us. And then we're going to hear from our own Jane Morby from Oxley Group, providing the SME manufacturer's perspective. And then John is going to lead a panel discussion looking at the future of manufacturing in Cumbria with all of our panel participants. So we realise this is a huge time commitment, but I think it's really important. In Cumbria, the manufacturing sector makes up 23% of our overall GVA. So a hugely important sector. And if we look at that as a percentage, that's probably about the third highest in the country in any LEP area. So it's a really hugely important sector for us. And we recognise that there's a real opportunity for the sector to move forward further by working collaboratively with each other. And we hope out of today, this is the start of working with all of our businesses to move those things forward. I did say housekeeping was my responsibility. And what we want for all of our participants is absolutely no shyness. All of our panel are committed to answering any questions that you may have. At the end of each speaker session, we've got a specific slot for questions for that individual speaker or speakers. And then we're also going to have a panel session. So any consistent themes, John as the chair will be gathering those up to explore collectively with the panel at the end of today's event. So we always have to check everyone recognises before we move on that we are recording this session, and we're recording it so that we can share it with others. Finally, I should say, before we get going proper, we have got some slight resolution issues on the slides, which we've done every technical fix we can to resolve, but it's not quite as sharp as we'd like it to be. Still very visible, but what we will be doing is sharing the slides soon after this event. And this, I promise you, with our fabulous speakers, will not in any way disturb your experience or the things that they can bring to share with you. Really do encourage everyone to use the question and answer box. You'll see on the bottom of your screen, it says Q&A. If you type any questions in there, we'll either pick them up for individual speakers or for the panel. So as I say, reiterating, don't be shy, please do use the box. So I think without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome our first speaker. And Juergen, you're going to have to forgive me. You've got so many letters after your name. I'll just start with the headline ones and let you weave them in seamlessly as we go. So Professor Juergen Maier, CBE, is an industrialist. He's the chair of the Digital Catapult, and former chief executive of Siemens UK. I think one of the brilliant things that Juergen did for the whole of the Northwest and now nationwide is launched Made Smarter, convincing the government. I think the original request for investment was 2 million, Juergen. Your pitch was clearly so successful, the then Chancellor gave you 10 times that amount of funding, which is a massive, massive success. And Jane is also heavily involved in Made Smarter, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Juergen is also vice chair of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, which brings together business and is driving forward the green reindustrialisation of the north of England. Juergen spends lots of time supporting businesses and helping them to move forward with the green fourth industrial revolution. Former chief executive of Siemens UK, and during his 33 years with Siemens, he held a number of roles both in the UK and in Germany. And his is a fabulous success story because he started as a graduate engineer with a BSc in production engineering from Nottingham Trent University on a Siemens-sponsored graduate programme. So I think we're going to talk quite a bit about skills on the panel session. Here is a perfect example of progression through an organisation based on skills development. So I think that's enough by way of introduction. Juergen, over to you. We're delighted to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Jo, for such a very kind introduction. And what a pleasure it is to be part of this important discussion. And Jo, you know, what you said there, 23% of the economy in Cumbria is dependent on manufacturing. And actually the number will be a lot greater than that, because normally you can put a factor of somewhere between 2 and 3 on that when you look at the further value that manufacturing then spreads into service industries, into restaurants, hotels, and all the rest of it. So really hugely important sector for Cumbria. And not a lot of people know that. and therefore it's important that we have discussions like this so that more people know. And well, one thing I can assure you is when I do have my discussions with government, I always shine a light on the Northwest. I always shine a light on the north of England. And indeed, I'm pleased to say that on Made Smarter, we've already had several discussions with yet another new Secretary of State, Kwasi Kwarteng. And I'm pleased to say that Kwasi is very supportive of what we're doing. That 20 million number you mentioned, by the way, Joe, that is just for the Northwest. Nationally, government have now invested 200 million in Made Smarter. And if you then take the private sector match, we're way over 400 million. That's still nowhere near enough. We're pushing, we need to make that a lot more if we're really going to create this green fourth industrial revolution, which is what the vision of Made Smarter is. And I will talk a little bit about that in my introduction. I'll keep my introduction to about 15 minutes maximum. And that should leave plenty of time for Q&A, which I always find is the more interesting part of these sessions. So as Joe says, please don't be shy, hit the Q&A button, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion at the end. So where are we in terms of our industrial, green industrial revolution in Cumbria in the Northwest? And how are we doing on it? Well, of course, you can't talk about this with just, putting the background as to where we are, which is that we are in, and I've got to say, it is quite a terrifying perfect storm that we are in. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, all of manufacturing has had to learn and adapt to manage the way in which we manage our workforces, our manufacturing activities and processes. So huge challenging times. I promise you I won't mention Brexit again throughout my session, but it has to be said, it hasn't been helpful, particularly for those who sit within integrated European supply chains, which a lot of our manufacturing industry does. That is yet another challenge that's been thrown onto our industry. And then finally, global supply chains are in tension as well. Obviously international relations with China, unhelpful trade wars. So we really are in quite a difficult situation. However, experience tells me that especially manufacturing and technology industries actually tend to do rather well in times of crises. And there are some elements of the crisis that does focus the mind, such as the global trade tensions, of course, is focusing the mind. And I can tell you from my discussions with government that the mind is much, much more on local resilience of supply chains than it ever has been before, because we have realized that when there is a little hiccup in global supply chains, let alone the tensions we're seeing now, how quickly critical items such as vaccines, of course, but it goes to lots and lots of manufactured goods, suddenly become in short supply. So it's a crisis, but I think it's a huge opportunity. And one thing is for sure, that innovation is going to be a key part to how we work ourselves and find the opportunities out of this crisis. I'm going to talk about four opportunities, and they are the green revolution, so greening manufacturing, the new green technologies, number one. The second is all around technology, research and innovation. The third area is around the adoption of all such technologies that are developed for manufacturing. And the fourth is, of course, leadership, culture, and skills within our manufacturing operations. And like I say, I'll just really be talking briefly about each one with a view to hopefully stimulating a bit of a discussion. So starting with green, I mean, it goes without saying, and it is the crisis we're in that has focused the mind to say that this revolution that is going to come out of the sort of the post-COVID, post-Brexit, new trading world we're in is going to have to be green. So therefore, there is no question that there is a massive opportunity to create the new industries that are going to be providing the green technologies, or to be in the supply chain of those companies. And I think the Northwest, I think Cumbria is well placed in those. I mean, obviously the huge one is nuclear, because nuclear is a low carbon, therefore is a green technology, and we know that there are opportunities, especially around new nuclear. So the modular reactor type activities, of which, of course, in the Northwest we have great experience, because we have those nuclear reactors already in operation in BAE Systems on the submarines in Barrow, which we will be hearing from later on. So, you know, big opportunities for nuclear technologies, and indeed a couple of our speakers today are very much in the supply chain for exactly that industry. So huge opportunities. There are other great technologies. I'm a big fan of hydrogen, and I think lots of technologies around hydrogen, and that is ranging from you know, pipelines, of which there is going to need to be numerous. I think that's a big opportunity for companies that have been in the oil and gas sector, and indeed there are companies in the oil and gas supply chain in Cumbria as well. As a matter of fact, the company I used to be chief executive of has one of those companies in Ulverston, supplying equipment into the oil and gas sector, or whether it's around green hydrogen, or whether it is around components that might go into hydrogen vehicles going forward, such as fuel cells and those sorts of things. So huge opportunities. There is obviously offshore wind technologies, which is also an opportunity. I mean, it is the bigger ecosystem around offshore wind is on the East Coast, which is also where my previous company Siemens invested quite a lot of its activities. But there is plenty of supply chain opportunities, and of course also some great offshore wind farms off the western coast of the northwest of England. So again, plenty of opportunities there. And then the final one that I would talk about is, you know, if there's one part of the UK that I think is well positioned for tidal energy and tidal barrages, then I think the Northwest Cumbria also has a great opportunity there. There's still work to do on getting the cost down of that technology, but that just comes down to innovation and scale. And I think as time goes on, there will be more opportunities for that industry too. So, you know, the good news is we can see where these industries are, where the demand is going to come from. So a great opportunities for manufacturers who are in supply chains, manufacturing specialist components. We've got the company Oxley with us today, who is supplying engineered components and specialist lighting equipment. Well, many applications there into some of the industries that I've just been talking about. So that's a huge green opportunity. The other opportunity, and I call it an opportunity, it's also a challenge, but I think it's an opportunity, which is that, you know, all of us in manufacturing have really got to make a bigger and a stronger effort to decarbonize our own manufacturing processes. So using advanced digital technologies, and I'm going to talk briefly about a few of those. A lot of it is about supply chain optimization, and a lot of it is about optimizing manufacturing processes. In my time at Siemens, selling technology into manufacturing, it was staggering, you know, how many times I went into manufacturing where there isn't the simplest of control system on monitoring furnaces, for example, where you could actually be taking the temperature down when they're in less use, and instead, you know, manufacturers just keep furnaces going at full tilt, or indeed keep industrial motors going at full tilt when they could be slowed with very simple inverter technology, and using less energy. And you know, all of these are not new things. A lot of this technology has been around for a long time, but we've just got to get better and faster at adopting these technologies to make our manufacturing and our supply chains greener. So there's a few of the opportunities around green. You know, one of the things that I often say is, you know, if you're now going to be investing in technology, whether it's in your manufacturing processes or whether it's technology for the future of manufacturing, you know, have a very strong eye on making sure what it is you're doing is helping decarbonize, because that is undoubtedly the trend of the next few decades. So the second area I said I'd talk about was research and innovation. Well, we've got some speakers with us today from Daresbury, from the great research facility and laboratories we have there. So I should maybe leave them to talk about more of this. And indeed, it is exactly ecosystems like we're lucky to have in Daresbury, like we're lucky to have with many of our universities in the Northwest, and indeed great that we're now also seeing the catapult movement coming stronger into the Northwest. It's these sorts of ecosystems that we need to have much more of to create the research and innovation laboratories where manufacturing companies can come together with their supply chains and can test and trial new technologies such as digital twinning. How do I go about creating a digital twin of a product that I'm creating? Well, you know, that sounds a pretty daunting task. The truth is it's getting a lot easier, and having facilities around like catapults, like Daresbury, that does do some work in that area, is great to be able to help us. And the reason why we need those labs is because, you know, large companies can't even afford those sorts of research laboratories themselves. If we go back, many of us go back a long, long time in manufacturing, and we can remember the ICIs and the GECs and the Ferrantis that had these sorts of research capabilities. Well, we have less and less of those capabilities, and therefore they are better done in catapult type organizations. And of course, the advantage there is that smaller companies, SMEs, can then better engage also. I'm delighted that Made Smarter is taking a part in that ecosystem, and indeed we've just closed a competition to create a number of Made Smarter innovation and Made Smarter research centres. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Daresbury is part of at least one of those applications, and we'll know by May which of those are and where those will be placed. And those Made Smarter innovation and research centres, they will be working on challenges like how do I get better data out of my manufacturing processes and use that to optimize my manufacturing? How do I create a digital twin of a product or a manufacturing process? How do I employ additive manufacturing? How do I maybe use virtual or augmented reality for simulating a future manufacturing process I'm developed, etc., etc., etc. So the good news is we're developing these ecosystems, and I encourage all manufacturers to get on board, look for competitions, join in with your supply chain, and use those facilities to ultimately learn and implement digital technologies. In many ways, these research centers are also designed to help create new technology companies. So this is in some ways about the adoption of the technology, but it's also about the creation. And the way that I often verbalize this, if you go into many of our manufacturing sites, and indeed it was the same for our Siemens manufacturing site. So if you go into our Siemens manufacturing facility in Ulverston, or into the one that that exists in Congleton, which I was always a big fan of, then you can see plenty of automation, data analytics, the beginnings of using of robotics going on. But you look at where does all of that technology come from? And you'll find that most of it comes from Germany, Japan, some of it from China. Quite a lot of software systems will often come from the USA. And you have to ask yourself, why aren't more of those suppliers of robotic systems, of software systems that are driving the digital twinning activities, why aren't more of those actually UK companies? And that's part of what this research journey is around, to also bring technology startup companies into these ecosystems, and to then hopefully create some players of the future that will be providing this technology into UK manufacturing. So that's, you know, a very quick journey around the whole research agenda, which of course is hugely complex, and I know we'll be hearing much more about that as we go through the agenda today. The third item that I said that I would talk about is about the adoption of technology. So, you know, wherever the technology is created, the robots, the software, the additive manufacturing systems, wherever they are created, the faster adoption of those into manufacturing operations. And indeed, when we did the Made Smarter review, and we talked to numerous, especially small to medium-sized manufacturers up and down the country, a very common answer we got is, well, you know, forget the fourth industrial revolution, we haven't joined the third yet. You know, and to be honest with you, I wasn't going to write a Made Smarter review that was titled Catch Up on the Third Industrial Revolution. We wanted to make it all about the fourth industrial revolution, but I don't really care. If you're still catching up, that's fine too. But you know, you'd better get on the journey. And I'm more and more convinced by this. If you're not on the journey, and it doesn't have to be hugely complicated, but if you're not on the journey of employing digital technology in your manufacturing, the chances are you will not be efficient, fast enough to market, and optimized enough to really be able to compete. Certainly, if you want to be in global supply chains. The good news is that when we did the survey for the Made Smarter review back in 2017, about 20% of SMEs said they were on the journey to becoming fourth industrial revolution ready. So starting to adopt some of the technologies that I've talked about. When Make UK reran that survey in the late 2020 last year, that number had risen to a staggering 80%. Now, I'm not suggesting Made Smarter was the whole reason for that. We're just part of a whole movement. But I think it shows a significant shift in mood. And that doesn't mean 80% of manufacturers are fourth industrial revolution ready, but are certainly, very much on the journey, thinking about the journey, and engaging with them. This is, of course, where Made Smarter is designed to help, and that 20 million Northwest Made Smarter. Well, it was a pilot. The pilot is now officially closed, and I'm pleased to say it's now continuing as a proper scaled up program for manufacturers to be able to get involved and get help with adopting technology. If you're not so aware of it, just go on madesmarter.uk, tells you all about it. There's some brilliant case studies on there as well, and I'm pleased to say there's some case studies of companies in Cumbria as well. A favorite of mine is the chocolatier, because I like chocolate as well, of course. And this is the company Friars, a long-standing manufacturer of chocolate in Cumbria. A very handmade, very beautiful Cumbrian chocolates, and therefore seemingly difficult to automate. But with the help of Made Smarter, they found a way to be able to add some automation to the process, but still make sure that the chocolates are very much of that handmade nature. And only through that automation can Friars now look to increase their output significantly. And they're looking of going from about 30 kilograms of chocolate per day up to 250 kilograms. So, I mean, that is a huge jump. And obviously could not be done by keeping it all totally manual. So the only way you can do that is to add some automation into the process. And I think that's the key message here, which is that, these sorts of robotic automation systems, they are no longer the multi-millions that only a major automotive manufacturer could afford. For 10, 20,000, and with a bit of help from Made Smarter, you can start to make a journey with a very small cobot, and obviously also a little bit of data optimization of manufacturing processes, and that's where Made Smarter is there to help. So that's about the adoption journey, and then finally, my point is about leadership, and it's about skills, and of course those two are totally linked, because it takes leaders to recognize that there is a huge demand on upskilling staff. At Siemens, I was always incredibly proud of the effort we put into bringing a huge number of apprentices into our manufacturing operations. And if I look back now, and if I wouldn't have done that 10, 20 years ago, what a problem we would be having today, as many people who have been, in operation for a long time, like me. I'd been in Siemens for 33 years, and there comes a time where you want to move on, do other things, maybe retire, and we have a responsibility to make sure our next generation is there to take on those roles. And of course, that next generation should be better equipped with some of the digital skills that we need. But there is also a huge requirement to upskill existing workforces. I'm pleased that Made Smarter is working with the High Value Manufacturing Catapult and Ingenuity. If you're not familiar with Ingenuity, some of you may remember them as the Sector Skills Council, SEMTA, and they're now working in collaboration with us. We're also working with the Department for Education to try and bring some of this together, also with the many further education colleges, to bring some better content together for being able to upskill manufacturing workforces. There is some great online content. If you go onto the Ingenuity website, you can also find it via Made Smarter website. There is a platform called Engage, and that platform has got a lot of free content for upskilling on whether it's data analytics, machine learning, augmented reality, all these sorts of things. But a strong dose of this, I think, is all about leadership, and therefore, I'm always keen to come and join events like this because, we are the leaders of industry and manufacturing, and I think we've got to champion these messages. We've got to champion people to upskill, invest in apprenticeships, invest in technology. And we've also got to be the people that hopefully get behind programs like Made Smarter. Please, when you talk to government officials or even to your MP, mention how important these programs are, because we in the UK, we tend to have a bit of a habit of starting great programs like this, and then 2 years, 3 years on, the funding runs dry, and these great programs stop. Many of you will remember the Manufacturing Advisory Service, where exactly that happened, and it's because of not a lot of enough people were banging the drum and saying this is important, we need it for our sector. So I mean, with that, I really end this session to say it's great that we come together, because it's these sorts of sessions that I think we all use to tank up on enthusiasm and energy, which, especially when a lot of it we're doing from home office, is not that easy. But please keep that energy up for our sector, and make sure that people take our sector as seriously as it needs to be for the huge value that we create for, in this case, the Cumbrian economy, but for the whole of the UK economy. So thank you very much, and I look forward to a little discussion with you all. Thank you.
Juergen, thank you very much. That was hugely impressive, covering 4 main themes without, as we can see, any reference to notes, slides or anything else. So brilliant job. As you would expect, your input has actually provoked quite a lot of questions from participants, covering the range of issues that you've identified. John Sidney said he loved the Made Smarter review. And within the review, there's a clear recognition that collaborative skills are essential. So his question is, what are the implications for teaching and learning from schools through to universities?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm going to give a very positive answer to this, and I know it's not universal, but when at Siemens, and we were out engaging with schools, universities, which obviously a company like Siemens and BAE Systems, we'll be speaking in a moment, do masses of this as well. I was always really impressed the way that young people come into our operation and have learned these skills of collaborating. And indeed, I mean, a lot of the collaborating we've been doing for the last 12 months have been on forums like this. And it is the young generation, that have taught me how you can come on a forum like this and get up a concept board so you can share what you're doing, scribble some stuff around. And so actually, I think a lot more of the issue is sometimes the upskilling of sort of our generation, and then being able to embrace those young people when they come from school, when they come from college, to make sure they're coming into a culture where they can help us develop those skills. And again, certainly I can speak for Siemens. We very much used the next generation to teach us how to run things like hackathons and online collaborative forums. So yes, of course, schools and colleges and universities need to do more of this. But I think in the end, it's all the coming together of all of that in the workplace, and really creating that culture of collaboration, innovation, and excellence. And I think we're not in a bad place, despite the knocking we sometimes see of our education system. So there you are, a positive answer.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's the perfect platform to plug our skills advisory panel, who are absolutely about making the connections between the world of work and the world of education. So really upbeat, positive response. Thanks for that, Juergen. The next question is potentially one more for government and might be slightly unfair. But Michael's asking, if decarbonisation is the highest priority, then why have the government just announced new oil and gas fields in the North Sea? I don't know whether you would like to say something or pass on that one, and we'll raise it with government colleagues. Entirely up to you, Juergen.
Well, look, I mean, I've been very close to sort of working with government on decarbonisation for many years, and you are so right. You know, sometimes there are real, you know, contradictions in the way we go. Now, the truth is that, you know, certainly for the next 20 or 30 years, net zero doesn't mean zero fossil fuel energy. I mean, that is clear. A lot will be able to be achieved with hydrogen, with offshore wind, with nuclear, but certainly some gas is going to be required. So therefore, you need to augment that with other technologies, such as, of course, carbon capture. Which again is a big opportunity as an industry, you know, also for the Northwest. Have we got the balance of that right? I mean, probably not yet. I am encouraged that the main oil and gas companies are, you know, and I'll say finally coming on board with really needing to create a transition. And I think there's much more realization by the Shells, the BPs, etc., that they need to transition to hydrogen, to get involved in carbon capture, to decarbonize what comes out of the oil fields that you mentioned. So, you know, is the government strategy all perfect? Absolutely not. You know, I can point to many other areas where they're getting things wrong. But I think the general drift is only going in one direction, and I think COP26 later on this year will shine another light on that, and there is no turning back.
Lots of questions flowing in. Thanks for that, Juergen, and thank you for picking it up, because it was aimed probably at another audience. But one of the points that's been picked up is at times we talk about manufacturing as a set of single unit activities, when clearly we know it's an absolutely complex system. Green manufacturing will clearly need a set of integrated activities, the obvious one being linking low carbon energy systems with manufacturing. The question that Neil Smart's asking is how Cumbria can create this integrated system, and what support do you think government could best provide to help make that happen?
Well, I think the best way we can do it is to create, you know, expert clusters that come around these themes. You know, I think Sheffield has been very successful at creating a cluster of companies around it that very much rely on sort of high precision machining of equipment, and with that, you know, they've brought people like Boeing, Rolls-Royce, McLaren, but increasingly now also smaller companies together. Now, obviously, you know, we're also blessed in the Northwest that we have BAE Systems now working with the Catapult to create the new high value manufacturing Catapult of the Northwest. And I think what would be a good idea is taking your specific question, Martin, is that we create such a unit, a Catapult probably, around exactly the topic you talk about, which is that the integration of the manufacturers and the supply chains ultimately to be able to provide the products, the technology, the system integration. Very often it's not about the product, it's about the system integration that we require of this technology. And I think that would be a good idea. There is a group of us actually that are sort of considering whether this would be a good idea to bring something like this together. Maybe a catapult in the northwest. It could be in Cumbria. It could be in Lancashire, and looking at some of these technologies. Also, what I'm particularly interested in is lightweighting technologies. Very important for the future of automotive, aerospace. A lot of strength of that in the northwest, and maybe a cluster, given we've got all the strength around advanced materials already around Greater Manchester, Royce Institute, graphene technologies, and all of that. So yeah, great question, and I think we need to bring more of exactly those sorts of ecosystems together.
And following on from that, Juergen, there's a couple of questions that probably move that forward, interested in the views. One is, you mentioned BAE as a large anchor organisation. What do you see the role of those large anchor organisations doing in supporting the green agenda through their own supply chains?
Well, I mean, they're critical, and we're lucky to have them in the northwest. And please, nobody misunderstand me. My biggest support in Made Smarter is for small to medium-sized manufacturers. But my experience is that small to medium-sized manufacturers can only thrive if we've got a really strong group of tier ones. And so you need the BAE Systems, the Rolls-Royce, the Siemens of the world to help stimulate that. And the answer is BAE Systems, but all the others have a huge responsibility in terms of supporting their supply chains, and both in terms of greening technology and in terms of automating. And I've got to say, and I'm not here to give an advert for BAE Systems, but BAE Systems have been one of the most supportive major companies in the Made Smarter program. Indeed, BAE Systems chair the local Northwest program full of manufacturers, and are therefore very, very supportive of helping not just there, but broader supply chains in terms of how they can better adopt technologies and how they can better green their manufacturing operations. We have recognized that sort of focusing on green and low carbon technologies probably hasn't been a big enough focus of Made Smarter. And as we develop the program, we want to change that and make sure it is a bigger focus, and then get companies, like BAE Systems and the primes behind and supporting the supply chains in that.
Thank you. And whilst you're talking about changes to Made Smarter, one of the questions that Martin Lewis has asked is about eligibility for Made Smarter. They're a business that remunerates their directors with dividends, which seem to be excluded. And he said that it'd be really helpful if that could be considered, Juergen, because potentially ruling out lots of really innovative businesses.
I shall check that out, and yeah. So I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of that, because lots of small businesses pay their directors by dividends. So happy to take that offline. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. One of the questions that's come from Mark Brook is regarding there's a requirement for the UK government to ensure there's an increased requirement for UK manufactured content, not just final assembly, construction and service for large infrastructure projects and contracts, as can be seen in other countries. So I think it's really the whole onshoring debate and what's the role of government in doing that. And you mentioned some of the perfect storm challenges for the sector during your presentation. Clearly there is a desire from government that we are still looking at a global Britain, but where does onshoring fit with this?
Yeah, it has to be a massive agenda, and I think we will see a much bigger push in this direction. Where you are absolutely right is that our government is a little bit confused about this one, because on the one side they absolutely want more onshoring, but on the other hand, when it gets to applying the tools, which is about using local purchasing power to encourage local supply chains, and which is very much about supporting innovation, then those tools are often not applied because, especially this government, often prefers the ideology of free markets. And I just can't get my head around it because it's absolute nonsense, because, free markets, are out of the window. How many billions have we just thrown at the economy because of the COVID crisis? Well, therefore, by definition, you are intervening in your local supply chain. So therefore, you might as well do it strategically and for the long term. And we're not brilliant at that. And the example I often give is if you take offshore wind, that Siemens, was a huge champion of, and I personally was and still am a huge champion of. I was always clear that I wanted more of this to be the local supply chain. But what we didn't do is we didn't throw enough incentives and we didn't throw enough innovation money at British companies being able to get part of those supply chains. So this is where programs like Made Smarter to help companies buy a new machine tool so that they can now machine the gearing that is required that goes into an offshore wind turbine, or indeed companies that might want to get involved in drone technology or something. The innovation money that goes into that sort of activity needs to be massively scaled to give British supply chains the opportunities to get into these industries. And certainly I'll keep banging the drum on this. And I think, we as a manufacturing community all should, because we don't always get this one right.
And I think that would be really appreciated, because one of the points that we've made consistently to colleagues in government is the kind of catalytic grant support for businesses to move beyond recovery to growth isn't really there in any kind of quantum. No. And the business sector will be critical to national recovery. So you've got lots and lots of questions, Juergen, and we will work with you offline to get responses to these questions. But and certainly we'll be visiting some of them in the panel session. But one final question that's come from James Long before we move on is, what advice would you give to businesses that were looking at scale up? How do they go about it, and where do they get the kind of support they need?
So great to see that question there from James. And you're a candle manufacturer. You see, and I love this sort of manufacturing. Really beautiful candles that we all like in our homes. And the great opportunity for you to scale that up. And my simple answer is, it is, reach out to the Made Smarter colleagues. And the good news is that there are so many case studies there now. You can also reach out then to other people who've had the similar experiences that you've had. So we create our own little ecosystem where we learn from each other, and we say, how did you do this? And how did you start to apply some of the early technology? How did you de-risk it? So if I'm going to invest 50,000, how am I going to make sure that I do get a return for that investment? And and no better people than Made Smarter and the people who've already had experiences. And you mentioned you're in a similar situation to Friars. Get Made Smarter to link you up and have a conversation with Friars. And I wish you well on that journey. I'm sure you'll find some way to better automate, and I'll look out for your candles.
And even better, not just look for them, buy them, Juergen.
Buy them, absolutely.
Right, and for Maisie in the chat box has included a link to Friars' case study, if anyone would like to see that. So can I say a huge thank you to Juergen? And this is decidedly a hello, goodbye, but we'll be seeing you on the panel session, and you'll be pleased to know that you've already got probably half a dozen other questions that people wanted to ask. So we'll make sure that we cover those either in the Q&A responses or in the panel. So thank you once again, and we'll see you later for the panel.
Indeed, I look forward to it, and I will be listening in to the next session, so I look forward to that, and see you all later. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. Right, so our next speakers, we're delighted to have a double act, and I'm not quite clear how the double act is going to work, so we'll very much leave it to Tom and to Alan to manage that for us. But if I can introduce them both and say delighted to have them with us. Dr. Tom Kirkham is the Business Development Manager at the Hartree Centre of the Science and Technology Facilities Council. Tom works with businesses of all sizes to identify opportunities where innovation in hardware or data can help optimise the use of resources and boost productivity. So if we think about the changes that have happened over the past 12 months in terms of data-led productivity and system-led productivity, I think there's lots that we can explore. And alongside Tom, we've got Alan Cross. Alan is the Business Applications Regional Ambassador for the North West and North Wales. Alan's currently working out of the Daresbury facility of the council and working on developing the Northwest Space Strategy and identifying the potential opportunities for Northwest businesses. So delighted to have both Tom and Alan with us, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Joe. So I think I'll start off first and then we move on to Alan. And Maisie, are you controlling the slides? I think so. So my name's Tom Kirkham. I'm a computer scientist at the Science and Technology Facilities Council, Daresbury Laboratory. As mentioned, I work with a lot of various different sized companies looking at how they can better utilize their data and improve productivity using technologies associated with high performance computing. If you go on to the next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with the Science and Technology Facilities Council, we basically look after the big scientific facilities in the UK. The closest site we've got in the Northwest is Daresbury Laboratory. And interestingly, just over 50 years ago, Harold Wilson opened the laboratory with the theme of white heat of technology. And now we're at the point where the laboratory is looking to engage more with business under the banner of the fourth industrial revolution. And if you look at how the facilities have changed during that time, computing is a great example for where we once had a Ferranti Atlas computer, which was the size of a supermarket and people physically had to get in queues in order to use it. Now we got the same processing power on your mobile phone, but also within our supercomputers, everything is digital and platform as a service, so it's a lot more accessible. And that goes all the way down the technologies associated with data, such as sensor technologies, which I'll focus on largely today. So next slide, please. Our main facilities at STFC are synchrotrons and other experimental facilities such as lasers and space science testing facilities. Effectively, the two facilities you see there, the Diamond synchrotron is the latest, and that's the size of a football stadium. So the large scale physics-based applications that we use them for. A lot of new materials analysis with large industry clients, and also wide-ranging research topics as well. All the data from there is processed using high-performance computing. It's petabytes of data, and we also are a tier 1 site for CERN as well. Next slide, please. So the Hartree Centre was brought into existence about 5 or 6 years ago to bring our expertise of managing and handling these large volumes of data in terms of analysis and bringing that to industry. At the time, there was a fair bit of hype around big data. Now there's a similar amount of hype around AI, and we're active in both those two areas. What's unique about STFC and Hartree is that we're an organization based on scientists. We're over 1,000 scientists across STFC. We're genuinely pretty agnostic when it comes to technologies and specifically vendors. So we're a good first port of call to discuss any ideas you've got around any innovation involving any of the different scientific areas we're involved in, and particularly around data and computing. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, our main facility is high-performance computing, and it's commonly associated with large complex data, such as you would find in genomics, bioinformatics, but increasingly HPC is being used as a driver of digital twinning technology as well. So Juergen touched upon digital twinning, and digital twinning can be broken into various different streams of work, but a key area for us that we look at is predictive analytics, and the ability to take data from a production line or a process and start and capture that specific model and then tweak it virtually in order to see if there's any potential improvements. And for a production system, that can be quite valuable because it can reduce downtime in terms of reconfiguring of lines, and it can optimize the success of those reconfigurations in terms of less downtime, but also improved resource usage. There's other uses of digital twinning. We are a facilities-based organisation, and HPC is generally supporting those facilities, but increasingly we argue that HPC will start to virtualize those facilities, and a good example is the physical wind tunnel. So now we've got a virtual wind tunnel at Hartree, so we can test new designs within that facility without having to use a physical one. So you can go straight from CAD to the HPC. And that links again with other technologies on site, such as additive manufacturing. Next slide, please. So I've touched upon what we do at Hartree with respect to modeling and simulation, getting your code onto the HPC, data science and AI, and product design. But generally, we're led by challenges presented by industry. So if you want the next slide again, sorry. We're very collaborative. So typically, there's various ways you can get involved with Hartree. Within our regional area, within the Liverpool City region, we've done a lot of work with the CLEP. Outside of our area, we do a lot of work funded by central government. We've just had a scheme called Bridging for Innovation, where we've worked with companies across the UK to adopt innovative technology to improve productivity. And we're looking like we're going to get a new round of funding for those kinds of projects as well. So I'll put in the chat my contact details and also some more examples of case studies, and feel free to get in touch, because now's a good time to talk to us about doing any of these projects. And the projects we work on tend to be within the sort of middle TRL zones. So when you look at Made Smarter is a particularly effective program because it brings together organizations like ourselves who can help sort of bridge the research cavern with organizations such as a Siemens, who can then link up with products which are in the marketplace to enable industry to go straight away. Next slide, please. So quickly, in terms of sort of practical technology, I'm going to have a quick scan over sensor technology today, and that links in with what Alan's going to talk about in the next few minutes, particularly focusing on the Internet of Things. So you're probably familiar with the Internet of Things as a concept, and effectively it's all about sensors. And sensors are interesting for us because obviously they produce lots of data, which we can analyze. And there's various projections about the growth of the Internet of Things, but it's expanding rapidly. And for a manufacturing setting, it's very, very relevant, because you might have a manufacturing facility which is, you might think it is not digital at all, but there's always a possibility to start adding sensors to your legacy equipment or integrating data from different areas in order to enhance the way you produce things. Next slide, please. So when you look at sensors or IoT devices, it's a massively varied area. And just looking at some of the work we've done, we can initially start within the network itself. So, quite a lot of factory floors don't have the connectivity with respect to IP architectures. And it's worthy of note that there's, in the last few years, numerous advances around wireless networking within these environments have come on board. We've got LPWAN, low powered wide area networking, where you can connect clusters of factories or sites across areas. And there's also 5G as well, which is not only a huge amount of bandwidth in terms of improvement, but it also allows things like haptics, which effectively is remote control over a network. With respect to sensors, you know, a huge use case of them is monitoring devices. A classic example of that is predictive maintenance. You can put a vibration sensor on an old machine and start to get data off it. And then you can look at those signals and then detect when there's a change in the signal, which could identify a belt's running out on the machine or something like that. So you can get in there early and replace it before it breaks. Our analysis of sensor data using imagery can link into artificial intelligence. So quality inspection of goods, you can automate that process with sensors and cameras, and you link into, as mentioned in the slides, FPGAs, processing units at the edge, where significant amounts of data can be analyzed using AI technology in order to identify faults. So it all starts with data with some respects, and specifically around digital manufacturing, and sensors are there and getting cheaper and getting more varied for you to apply. And it's a great way of working with ourselves or universities to start this journey upon Industry 4.0. Next slide, please. And to assist in that, and we've sort of recognized that sometimes physical projects are not an ideal way in for some companies. A lot of organizations want to test the water. So to support that, we set up the Industrial Digitalization Accelerator at Hartree with Siemens and Atos. We are not limited to those two technologies, but they're two technologies we demonstrate for, you know, in market products. But we work with companies to address specific issues around what they want to look at in terms of computing resources, or how, if they've got specific issues around legacy equipment and data they want to handle. So effectively it's a one-stop shop to create a digitalization strategy. So you can come into the Hartree Centre, or now we can set things up virtually, where you can talk to our scientists and you can start to scope out the ways you can address your challenges. And this is pre-project phase, so you can effectively engage with this at no cost. Next slide, please. So last slide, as discussed, we do collaborative R&D. We do operate within the middle tiers of the TRL sector. If you're interested in getting involved in Made Smarter or any other government funded schemes, I'm more than happy to help and support you on those grants, collaborate with you on those grants. It's quite, you know, obviously grants have got a longer lead time and they're not guaranteed, so you can also pay for our access, but I'm hoping that in the short term, we're going to have a new set of funding coming on board, which will enable organisations to work with us with more support. So that concludes my part of the talk, and I'll pass on to Alan. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Tom. So good morning, everyone. My name's Alan Cross. I'm the European Space Agency's Business Applications Regional Ambassador for North West England and North Wales. And I'm hosted by STFC at Daresbury, working in the building over the road from Tom there. And over the last few months, I've become their co-lead in the development of a Northwest space strategy. I'm going to talk briefly about these two different hats that I wear. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So you might be thinking, what on earth has space got to do with what I do in my business? So in terms of ESA business applications, this is about the use of data from space in order to help earthbound businesses to create new products and services. So with regards to smart factories and perhaps even smart supply chains, what we're looking at here is satellite positioning, navigation and timing. We're looking at satellite connectivity, and we're looking at satellite imagery. So satellite PNT, the term we use is Global Navigation Satellite Systems, GNSS, the most famous of which is the American system called GPS. There's also the Russian GLONASS, Chinese Baidu, European Galileo, and a number of others. But basically, these are atomic clocks in space, and they send out very accurate time and signals. Your device detects at least 4 of them, one would hope, and then calculates its position. We're very familiar with how that's used in route mapping and these kind of things. But actually, there's a lot of information can be gained by using the timing signal itself. So we're talking here about precision timestamping and synchronization. It's used extensively in the national grid, for example. So when we're talking about this space data in smart factories, we're not talking about what's going on inside the factory necessarily. It's how the factory engages with other factories, with other assets outside of itself, with its environment, with its supply chains. So you can see route optimization and precision timestamping could be very useful in those circumstances. Also, satellite connectivity. I'm not using the word satellite communications because we're currently in the middle of a revolution. If you think of rows and rows of houses with TV satellite dishes all pointing in the same direction, we're moving beyond that now. So they're all pointing in the same direction because they're pointing at one satellite, 36,000 kilometers away above the equator, fixed in that part of the sky. So the signal takes quite some time to get there and back. And so satellite broadband at the moment has got a considerable lag. It's very difficult to use for the likes of telepresence or augmented reality, or even really just using the internet in general. You get quite an annoying lag. We're now using low Earth orbit, high-speed broadband. So this stuff's 700 miles away. So you get very high speeds. And it means that if you're trying to connect to remote locations or remote assets, you can do it. You're not having to dig up huge tracts of Cumbria to lay down fiber optic cables. You can get high speed broadband, literally 3 times faster than I get here in central Liverpool, remotely. And so there's use there for reliable and secure connectivity in all locations for the tracking and tagging of remote assets or beyond line of sight assets. Of course, remote training and guidance like artificial or virtual or extended reality. Live IoT data as well. You know, this data doesn't take an awful lot. You're talking kilobytes in some cases, and you might have some assets for Internet of Things that are larger. You know, you might be talking about a huge wind turbine. You've got a lot of data you need to get out of there. You might be talking about the hinge on a gate, in which case you don't need an awful lot of data, but being able to make sure you can get that live. You're not having to go and pick up a hard drive in order to understand what's happened to the system. And of course, as a backup to terrestrial networks, it's very useful to have that second option. Satellite imagery, this is in the visual spectrum, but it's also in infrared and ultraviolet and radar and LiDAR and microwave, a huge range. It's incredibly useful for the monitoring and mapping and change detection, crucially, because those satellites are coming over again and again and again, sometimes several times a day. If you're trying to keep an eye on a remote asset, you can do that. You can see when something has changed. You can have an automatic alert to then, you know, rather than checking on something every 6 months, you can get a live alert so you know when something is going on there. And of course, the forecasting of assets, resources comes into that, as well as Juergen touched on there, environmental sustainability. It's going to help with decarbonisation. And of course, as we all use it for the weather, for understanding what's happening in a specific location. Next slide, please. Thank you. So ESA business applications at a glance, we're part of ESA Space Solutions, which is a big innovation network, the biggest in the world regarding space. But we are focused very much on Earth. We're not talking about building rockets in this instance. So what we do is we co-fund commercially viable services to get to market. And we do that by co-funding, usually at 50%, feasibility studies, demonstration projects, services and products that are using space data focused on the downstream, using those 3 technologies I just mentioned in all sectors. So yes, in manufacturing, but in education and in safety and security and environmental and logistics and transport and smart cities and everything you can think of on Earth. If there's an application there that is using space data in some way, we can help support that. And that's my job as the regional ambassador, is to reach out, help organizations understand what the possibilities are and assist in those initial stages of application. Now, for some of you listening, you're not going to be developing services that are using SATCOMs or GNSS. However, you may be a potential customer or end user of those things. So if you are interested in becoming part of a test bed, in really getting to the cutting edge of what is coming up in terms of products and services using these data types, come and speak to me. We can help you plug in with those partners. Next slide. Thank you. So again, just to reiterate, we're not talking about R&D funding here. We're talking about co-funding a commercial project to get it to market. It's got to be desired by customers. It's got to use feasible technologies. We don't want you to reinvent satellite position. We just want you to use what's currently available. And it's got to be viable and sustainable. We need to know that, this is about creating a new product and service. We need to know people are going to use it. And it's all, by the way, zero equity. This is public sector money. We don't want to own any of your business. We don't want the money back. We want you to grow, create more jobs and pay more tax, let's be honest. Okay, next slide. So a case study in this would be, this is something that we've funded previously. I am just going to pop some details in the chat, some links to us for the funding that we have available and previous projects and stuff. So there we are. So one of the previous projects we've supported, this case study, Stratio Automotive. So this was enabling those original equipment manufacturers to detect faults in real time and predict those failures. So this is not about bringing some of your equipment in from your customer and testing it. It's not about modeling it, and it's about real-time data out there in the real world, helping to understand what's going on there, so you can detect warranty fraud, for example. So to help with the after-sales predictive maintenance, so you can pull a customer in and say, look, we need to replace this particular component because it's going to fail in a month, and that may take a few hours, rather than the equipment coming in a couple of months later, the catastrophic failure, and then for the customer, it's much more disruptive. So this is a way of improving the service to that customer, as well as understanding your own products. And actually, this Stratio Automotive is actually scoped to include satellite connectivity, because it's a component in vehicles. Yes, the mobile phone networks cover 99% of the population, but as you know, in Cumbria and other places, that doesn't necessarily mean 99% of the land mass. So there are large parts of the country that don't have that data coverage. So maybe satellite connectivity can help plug those gaps. Okay, so that's a lightning quick look at ESA business applications and the use of space data potentially in smart factories and smart supply chains. If you do have any more questions on that, let me know. Contact me directly. I know that's a data dump. I know it's a lot to take in, but there it is. I'd like to put on my other hat now, which is for the co-lead for the Northwest Space Cluster Strategy. I'm just going to tell you very briefly a little bit about this, so you know what's coming on the horizon. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the space sector, it's big business. It's 290 billion pounds or thereabouts, globally, that is. About a third of that is upstream. So that's the manufacturing and operation of launch vehicles and satellites and spacecraft, and the ground infrastructure that supports them. And it might surprise you that around 2/3 is downstream. It's the use of the space data, which I've just touched on there. From the moment you wake up to the moment if you are going to work, the moment you get to your place of work, you're interacting with about 25 individual satellites. So there's a lot of data being generated there. But I'm going to focus now on manufacturing, since you're manufacturers. Bank of America predicts that in 10 years, the size of the global space sector might have tripled. 1.4 trillion to about 900 billion pounds. So in the UK, we're looking at 15 billion pounds. So it's about 5% global market share. And again, it's about 1/3 manufacturing operations and about 2/3 applications. In the Northwest, there are 75 self-identifying space organizations. So these are businesses. They may not just be only working with space, and this includes universities and research labs, but by the majority of them are actually private sector, again, working in digital and in manufacturing. Most of them aren't exclusively space. They're actually doing products and services for a range of sectors, including aerospace and defense, and the space is part of that for them. Now, despite the Northwest building, as you do in Cumbria, you know, all Britain's nuclear submarines and the F-35 and the Eurofighter and Project Tempest, and, you know, we've got the Hartree Centre and Jodrell Bank and things like that. According to official figures, we only generate half of 1% of the UK space sector. And that's based on those self-identifying space organisations who've stepped forward. One of two things is possible here. Either that figure is true and we are only generating half of 1%, or there's a lot more activity going on under the radar. Either way, there is clearly plenty of potential for growth for space in this region. So let's look to the future. Next slide. Thank you. The government is committed to growing the UK space sector from 5% to 10% of the global market by 2030. And they're doing that in a number of ways. One is Launch UK. So this is promoting and enabling commercially operated spaceports. So we're talking about launching into space from Great Britain. A number of sites are currently in development. Newquay, Cornwall is a horizontal launch site, taking off and landing like a plane. Snowdonia Aerospace Centre at Llanbedr is similar, but will likely be an R&D facility. And then we have multiple locations across Scotland, including Shetland and the north coast of mainland Scotland, Campbelltown. Many of these are vertical launch, sending traditional rockets. Please don't think it's like Kennedy Space Center. We're not talking that big. We're talking much smaller facilities, launching smaller satellites, which is, by the way, where the market growth is, sending them in polar orbits around the pole. So the Earth turns beneath you, very useful for Earth observation and communications there. And crucially is sovereign launch capability, building our own rockets and launch vehicles. As you can see in the graphic there, this is British companies like Skyrora and Orbex and Reaction Engines. Virgin Orbit is going to be operating out of Newquay, Cornwall. There's a lot of reorganisation with national bodies like the UK Space Command, which came into existence 2 weeks ago. That's the military side of things. UK Space Agency is the civil. That's being reorganised into delivering programmes rather than just policy. And programmes like OneWeb, which you may have heard of. And absolutely the bedrock of this, of both Launch UK and these new national bodies, the bedrock of getting us from 5% of the global market to 10% of the global market is understanding and leveraging and growing our regional capabilities. We're not going to get to 10% if it's just Guildford and Oxfordshire. It's not going to work. And so we need to understand what you are doing in Cumbria. So can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Part of that is this Northwest Space Cluster strategy. So we're laying the foundation for a Northwest Space Cluster. So what we've been doing, STFC have been working with all the regional LEPs, that's Cumbria, Lancashire, Liverpool, Manchester, Cheshire, along with other research councils in UK research innovation, along with the Northwest Aerospace Alliance, the Northern Space Consortium. It was a small project paid for by the UK Space Agency, but this was about outlining the Northwest's existing space sector and coming up with recommendations towards the development of a Northwest Space Cluster. And of course, demonstrating the value of that cluster, both to the regional economy and to the existing space sector. So you can expect to see this document in the next couple of weeks or months. We're in pairs at the moment because of local elections and we're a government department, so there's some delay around that. But the next step's going to be, we hope, based on the recommendations, the creation of a dedicated role to refine that strategy, to define actionable key performance indicators for all the different LEPs that we're working with. What do you want? By what time? Do you want X amount of jobs in the next 10 years, say? And we're doing that by working with you and by working with the LEPs and working with local and national government and the universities to find those specific opportunities and routes to market. So please expect to see and hear a lot more from me and my colleagues in the coming months as we try and better understand what your capabilities are and match that up with emerging opportunities in the space sector. And I think if my next slide should confirm, yes, that's the end of it. Thank you very much. That was another lightning fast talk through that, but I hope it's been useful.
Brilliant. Thank you to Tom and Alan for that. In terms of questions, I'm very conscious of time. So what we will do is pick up the questions of the panel section, if that's okay. And brilliant, thank you. And can I ask, and one of the questions you actually answered, Alan, Ken Royal was asking about case studies on particular opportunities for manufacturing, and you very, very helpfully put opportunities and examples in the chat. So that one I think we've covered off, thanks, Ken. So if I can ask everyone, it's now 5:02. We promised a 15-minute comfort break to give people time to do whatever they needed to do to catch up on their morning. And we'll be back at 11:10 with Simon Lee joining us from BAE. So 15 minutes from now, please do come back, because you've not only got Simon speaking, Jane speaking, but you've also got the fabulous panel asking and answering more questions from you. So see you back at 10 past. Thanks, everybody. Well, welcome, Simon. We are currently online, but we're giving people a comfort break. You joined us just before we broke for that comfort break. So we're expecting people back in the next minute or two, and then we'll get going properly then.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, thank you.
I was expecting it to be auto muted, so I will. I'm ready to go.
Right, thank you. And as I say, we are live. We're just waiting for colleagues to return from their comfort breaks.
Okay,
so
very
we
good.
should be good to go in a minute or so, if that's all right with you.
Of course.
Right, good morning everyone yet again. I hope you managed to recharge your coffee cups, catch up on anything urgent and do anything else that you might need to do. I'm now delighted to continue this morning's event with Simon Lee, who is joining us from BAE Systems. Simon is the Supply Chain Director. He's based and working out of Barrow-in-Furness, and prior to joining BAE in 2018, Simon held numerous global roles, predominantly based overseas within the power generation industry. Simon holds both an electrical engineering degree and also a degree in French, which he secured whilst working on nuclear projects in France. So we're delighted to welcome Simon. Simon is going to lead us through a presentation, and then we'll be staying for a Q&A session. So as you've been brilliant this morning in feeding the questions through, if you can continue to use the Q&A box, I'll pick up on any points that you'd like us to raise with Simon. Unfortunately, he can't stay for the panel session because he's got an urgent business meeting that he's been called to. So please do take the opportunity to raise any questions before he leaves us. So welcome, Simon, and over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for the introduction. It always sounds very impressive. So my resume, I'm sure it's not that impressive. So, but bonjour. So my name is Simon Lee. I'm the supply chain director of here at BAE Systems Submarines. My team and my colleagues are responsible for probably over £1 billion worth per annum of services and products that we need to acquire in order to design and build the submarines here in Barrow. So today I'm not actually in Barrow, which is unusual for me, but I've got an urgent meeting with the supplier. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really pleased to be able to share with you some of the insights into Barrow. So I'd like to talk to you about the BAE Systems as a business and submarines, and probably more specifically about how we do business and what that means to the context of the local area, specifically in Cumbria. First slide, please. So yeah, on submarines business itself, we employ over 10,000 people, predominantly in the Barrow-in-Furness area, and have built every single submarine that's currently in service within the Royal Navy. We are one of the major employees in the area, and as a manufacturing business, are highly dependent on our suppliers and their ability to support us. Just for reference, over 90% of our expenditure in the supply chain is in the UK, and a significant proportion of that is also within the Northwest. There are very few large businesses that can claim that level of sovereign spend. That's obviously driven by the high levels of security and technology that we drive in designing and building these submarines. It's also an important year for us here in submarines. You know, the Barrow shipyard turns 150 this year. And it's very inspiring to think that this business, which started life as a humble iron shipbuilding company back in 1871, has been a key player in the industry for such a long time. And you'll find that many people who work here in Barrow have worked here for generations and ultimately are extremely proud to be part of that long history. It's been able to adapt, and its ability to adapt and make improvements over the year that sustained its relationship over a long period with the Royal Navy, from our very first Admiralty contract way back in the 1870s for HMS Foxhound, up to its current role, where we're designing and building some of the most complex products on the planet, both within the Dreadnought program and the Astute submarines program. The relationship that we have with the Navy and the Ministry of Defence is really important from a business perspective. Government contracts give security, and our order book now goes beyond the 2030s. Our main focus is on finishing the Astute program. We delivered 4 boats out of that 7-boat program already, and we're already ramping up our business on the Dreadnought program, which is a further 4 boats. Which, on a scale, the Dreadnought program is, you know, only second to HS2 itself. We are building a plan for the future generation of submarines as well, with the aim of sustaining our industrial capability for decades to come. So having an order book beyond the 2030s, if we can continue to secure future contracts for submarines, this is going to take us long into the 2050s. So long past my retirement date, but certainly securing the future for the local community and for businesses in the region. So what does that mean for the economy and the business? Well, we will create and sustain in the region of 30,000 jobs, including an estimated 7,900 on design and the build program itself. This will unlock a significant contribution to the government's levelling up agenda. It's estimated that around half the jobs supported by the program are in the northwest of England. In addition, we'll drive economic development and work with local stakeholders to transform the future of Barrow itself. This includes the Future High Streets Fund and the Towns Fund. Investing also in our skills and training to create a talent pipeline is also one of our key aims here at BAE Submarines. You know, we will recruit over 200 graduates and more than 1,500 apprentices over the next 5 years. The importance of this is that the investment that we put into the developing skill sets in Barrow benefits the wider area, and it helps to create a more highly skilled workforce in the local area. You know, Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary of State, visited only a couple of weeks ago, and you know, not only encourage us to continue with this development of our training facilities and the skills and capabilities in the region, he also wanted us to focus on, you know, more of those leadership and management and executive capabilities that we require in order to sustain these long-term programs, but also finding and developing those skill sets in the local region is extremely important to us. As a result of all of this work, we intend to improve social welfare in Barrow in Furness by attracting public and private sector investment to the town. And we are going to create opportunities for the long-term unemployed as well. And this is also something that's very, very close to the hearts of BAE Submarines and the leadership team and our colleagues here. Just before we go into impact, both BAE Systems local community have, I would like to give you some details around our COVID response over the last 13 months. So next slide, please. As you know, COVID has impacted everybody, both globally and nationally. And back in March of 2019, you know, we pretty much sent all but 300 of our 9,000 colleagues home ahead of the national lockdown instructions. Our number one priority was the health and safety of our colleagues, and we asked a very few to remain and enable delivery of HMS Audacious. We've actually left the yard second week in April, I believe. You know, it sailed out of Barrow without the usual pomp and ceremony and the thousands of people that usually line the various docks. But, you know, it was with no less pride that we managed to deliver that submarine. And we've seen that pride in the community for over 150 years now. So During the next few months, following the direct instruction from the ministry to continue those critical national programs, we've reset our business ultimately in order to enable a controlled return to site for those additional key workers that we needed in order to continue and support the delivery of these critical national programs. As the major employer in the south of the county, we recognised our responsibility to step up during the early stages of the pandemic. And throughout, we ended up protecting the health and safety and security of the local community. 1 in 3 people within the Barrow region and the Cumbria region work directly for us. And so therefore we have a significant contribution to the health and safety of the wider community. In the first week, we were the first business in the county to start to donate to the Cumbria County Council and the Foundation Emergency COVID Response Fund, with significant sums above 50,000, if I remember rightly. We acted as a catalyst to enable the CCF to raise over £3.5 million to continue to support. Whilst these financial donations was important, we also quickly recognised that we could use our skill sets and experience and our engineering capabilities and resources to assist a range of sectors, including health, education and the local authority. From a health perspective, we worked with our suppliers to design and construct 2 recovery centres at the Furness Academy and also at the Kendal Leisure Centre to ensure local hospitals were not overwhelmed during the first waves, but we also supported the hospital trust by providing logistics support. And we had many volunteers from the business who were really keen to support the local community by transport essential medical supplies to hospitals and pharmacies and GP surgeries. From an educational perspective, we provided upwards of 200 laptops to local schools to support those pupils with limited or no access to digital equipment, which was really important. As we all know, those of us who do have families, homeschooling was particularly challenging. This provided 200 educational packs to the most disadvantaged children as well. And, we were really happy to be part of that support process and help to deliver STEM catch-up activities as well. Throughout the pandemic, we have also worked closely with the local authority, recognising the challenges they faced. Our support included seconding employees to help with maintaining their IT infrastructure, as well as project management support for the reopening of libraries, distribution and monitoring of funding, etc. In all, to date, we've delivered over 25 COVID response activities, donated over 100,000 and also provided over 1,000 hours of in-kind support. So, that's been done with the sense that we are ultimately a significant part of the community. Without the community, there's no BAE Systems submarines and vice versa. So, our close connections to the community is extremely important to us here in BAE Systems. So next slide, please. So maximising our impact and reach to Cumbria. So the latest English indices around deprivation, published annually by the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government, confirms that, Barrow-in-Furness is comparatively deprived area. It's also home to 3 of the county's most deprived wards, and where average household income is well below the national average. So what are we doing in the local area to help to rebalance this? We're working with the Barrow County Council, and the regional government. We've co-developed a regeneration plan that will improve the town and its infrastructure, and we aim to attract more investment and people to the region. We work collaboratively with our partners across the public, private and voluntary sectors to help to achieve inclusive growth for the local area. BAE Systems has been a central contributor to the development of bids such as the Towns deal, which saw Barrow successfully awarded 25 million in the autumn of 2020. As part of the Towns Deals programme, we're actively working with further and higher education providers to support the Barrow Learning Quarter project. This is a partnership between the local authority, academia and industry to develop higher education campus and skills hub that will enhance progression into participation in higher education, including regional capability. Providing demonstrable long-term commitment with the private sector and partnership, working with local authority, will be instrumental in achieving success in these bids. Furthermore, we believe that the committed spend on the Dreadnought programme itself will give confidence to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government that Barrow-in-Furness is the right place to invest and inject investment. Such investment will deliver viable infrastructure improvements and encourage further ventures such as the Marina Village. These game-changing improvements for Barrow-in-Furness will help to shift negative perceptions often associated with the geographically isolated part of the country. You know, a factor which does impact our own ability to attract and retain suitably skilled employees. Our proposed modern campus facility is one of the 6 major projects of regeneration portfolio set to transform Barrow itself, along with Marina Village, a housing site of more than 450 new homes, the town centre improvement programme and the developments of adjacent Bucklow Dock area with a campus and public realm enhancement means that there will be more and more exciting regeneration activities, and it's an exciting time for Barrow in itself and the Cumbria region in terms of infrastructure investment. We continue to develop our employees through long-standing relationships with a variety of higher education providers and training organisations. Following recent visits by the Secretary of Defence, as I mentioned, Ben Wallace, he was very keen to, his constituency is very close actually in Lancaster, up here in the northwest. Ben was very keen to understand what work we're doing on the back of our successful early careers programme that I alluded to earlier. And he's also looking to develop those executive skills that I also mentioned. We get a lot of support. We work extremely closely with the Secretary of State and the local community, and we're very proud to continue to develop that relationship. Next slide, please. Social impact. So whilst the business already delivers a range of social value activities through community investment, education, and skills outreach, as various partnership representations, the supply chain function itself has recently developed a social impact approach to complement and amplify this, using the significant buying power of the business itself and the skills, knowledge, and resources within the supply chain function. While some work has already taken place, the appointment of a full-time procurement social impact lead will help to accelerate the progress of this approach. The investment that is taking place currently should be used to leave a legacy of a robust and balanced economic structure for the local area, supporting supply chain partners to utilise the long-term viability of our business to develop, diversify and grow ultimately, creating an economic less dependency on a sole employer. Our social value, supply chain social value impact approach also involves using our spending power and influence of our supply base to create real social value and help support the development of the local area. The supply chain impact approach, does serve the following objectives. It helps to develop small and medium enterprises. You'll be really, surprised the size of small companies that we do use within our supply chain portfolio, and that's usually driven by the high level of technology that we require. It's a very niche market that we tend to dip into and manage and be part of. This is also redeveloping the capacity and capability of our existing local suppliers to enable them to potentially increase their work with us or to diversify into other markets. We will do this by working with business support agencies such as Cumbria LEP or Cumbria Chamber of Commerce. In addition, we're also keen to engage those local suppliers who do not currently supply to us to give them more information to understand what is required to become a supplier of BAE submarines, or connect them to one of our tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers. We're also very keen and very focused on creating a skills workforce. This is about using the skills and the resources and the experience of our business and our suppliers to really support local schools, colleges, and employment support agencies to ensure children, young people, adults have the right skills and behaviours to meet the local labour market needs. Examples might include offering work experience placements or developing a movement to work programme for unemployed people. Another activity we're taking is also we're very focused on creating a diverse capability. This is about connecting with our existing non-local suppliers to explore opportunities for them to work with local suppliers, co-locate here in Barrow with us, or to explore opportunities for them to carry out their work locally and in doing so support the diversification and the sustainability of the local economy. Some of the ways we're doing that is by using advanced manufacturing technologies. I know it's one of the key threads of today's session. So whilst our product is unique, extremely unique, and our customer understandably very conservative, the need for change is imperative if we are to attract and retain a new generation of submarine manufacturers and to deliver value for money for our customer. Our approach has and will continue to be based around exploitation of existing technologies, lessons learned and around heavy equipment manufacture, and we've managed to mature these over the last few years and can now be applied to our industry itself. Whilst we have many unique parts, there are also common job families and tasks. Robotic, machining, welding have started to be enabled within our own facilities, and we see this as a really a future opportunity for us. Better enable and more accurate production of piece parts. This also drives us towards, the challenge that we have of having our submarines available for mission critical activity, and the ministry is very keen for us to do that. And this all rolls into our approach around manufacturing and advanced manufacturing technologies. We're just starting to discover about the ability for success to deliver these, and these are very evident for us, and we want to work closely with our supply chain in developing those capabilities. So we're on a journey, we're approaching the end of the beginning maybe. Working with us and with UK catapult centres and collaborating with BAE sites across the UK and the US, it's been impossible to understand how we can adapt existing proven technology to our industry. Small SMEs have their part to play in this. Whilst COVID has interrupted our work, we are about to restart work with a small company we met through the Knowledge Transfer Network. We're rarely inventing new technologies, rather utilising existing technology in order to suit our industry. The ability to understand and manufacture confidently and accurately to demand rather than to store also gives us an opportunity to take design decisions later, give the supply chain more flexibility and agility. It allows us to react to engineering and customer drive change, and I can assure you in a product that has a life cycle of anything from 5 to 10 years in order of its design and development phase, we are constantly facing the challenge of engineering change. We want to reduce our associated scrap with regards to our sustainability program. We'd like to reduce environmental and social impact of construction as well. So, but most of all, reduce the cost of ownership for us, who it's ultimately, we all pay the bill of delivering, manufacturing, designing submarines, because it's ultimately funded by the taxpayer. The appetite for change is rapidly gathering pace. Our biggest challenge of all may be to deliver on our own expectations. And we have high expectations in order to achieve those goals. So what's our commitment to local businesses? Well, you've heard me talking about a lot of different things today that BA are doing to support the development of Barrow itself, but also our southern sites where we have a significant footprint, but in particular on how we have a vision to improve the business and the industrial base that we have in this area. The question you've all probably asking is, what does that mean for me? How do I tap into the opportunities that we've outlined here today and we've discussed with a few of the other presenters? The answer is currently, it is difficult. I'll be very open and honest with you. If you are a new supplier to BAE, it's not an easy journey that you'll go on. And we need to try and understand, how you can not only win business, but also how you can get visibility of future opportunities so that at the very least you can bid or tender for them. We'd like to drive competition into our supply chain. But also that has to fundamentally meet the requirements of operating with a nuclear license and developing, these really highly technologically advanced products. Coming to this event and thinking about what I could say about what we're doing, this really firmed things up from my mind that we need to do more. We need to make working with BAE easier, and we definitely need to make it more transparent. Following the event today, we'll be looking at how we can do some of those key activities. So how we're going to help local businesses to understand how they can contract with us, not just, but with the wider defence as well. Submarines is just one part of the BAE Systems business. We're also hugely active within the air industry and in other significant defence contracts as well. So it's an opportunity not just to be a partner with us in submarines, but it also gives you the opportunity to have the ability to stretch further into BAE. This could include workshops, how we can contract with defence, explaining how do you get visibility of opportunities, the accreditation process that you need, how to start on that journey, and how we can potentially support you through that journey as well. We'll also look to create some form of engagement as a pilot from today in order to test the viability of undertaking a more direct engagement approach. Following the session, we'll take, we'd love to take the details of many of the companies who are interested in working with us and and offering those services and that expertise. The partnerships that we develop are not just short-term here within submarines as a business. These are long-term, highly interesting, highly challenging relationships, but we're on a collaboration agenda here within submarines, and we're very keen to develop those long-term partnerships. I have many ideas and many opportunities. My team is a significant number of people. They're highly skilled. They're hugely, proud of working within Barrow and Finesse and working for BAE Submarines. Many of them, as I said earlier on, have got very close working relationships and personal relationships with the local community. So, I'd like to finish by, playing you a short video which demonstrates the size and scale of Dreadnought program. Few countries in the world have the capability to design and build nuclear submarines. The design is intricate, the technology is highly sensitive, and the manufacturing is precise. They must operate in silence and remain undetected for months. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to boost education, boost infrastructure, boost technology, and to enhance the UK's maritime supply chain and sustain one of our most critical defence capabilities. Our legacy will be delivering 4 submarines in the Dreadnought programme on schedule to maintain our continuous at-sea deterrent for decades to come. In doing so, we are very proud that we will be able to deliver a profound contribution to the economic and social value across the country, but even more specifically in Cumbria itself. We take huge pride in the connection that we have with our community, and we're very happy to continue that for another 150 years if possible. So if you'd like to play the video, and I'm really happy to take any questions afterwards. So thank you very much.
Well, Simon, what a brilliant point to end your presentation on. Fabulous and inspiring. In terms of the questions that have come through, clearly you've already touched on one of the main themes, which was about supply chain opportunities. You talked about, one of your slides was maximising impact and reach. We had questions on that theme from Graham McAvoy at Rovtech, Stuart Bow and Sandra Collins, all who recognised and were flagging some of the issues that you'd raised around engagement, ability to work with BAE. You gave a very honest assessment of the challenges. You talked about a new host to help make that happen, a competent team. What other reassurances can you give that things can be changed and that local businesses can be helped to navigate the process?
Okay, well, thanks for the question, Graham, Stuart, Sandra. Well, yeah, how can you not be excited about being involved in such a program? You know, it's hugely motivating for everybody that comes to work here in Barrow. So how can I reassure the supply chain that, you know, our commitment to make things easier? Well, in a short sentence, we have to. Ultimately, you know, these programs are hugely expensive to the taxpayer. They do give a huge amount of security to us as a country, and that doesn't come at a small cost. So in order to make things more competitive, deliver value for money and shorten the schedule of from design and build and manufacturing into delivery of the submarine, we need to make it easier for our suppliers to work with us. There's going to be various new initiatives that are going to be launched on the basis of that. But, you know, my entire organization is challenged with driving value for money and improving the schedule performance of our supply chain. So we are completely open to any types of connections, any types of opportunities. And, you know, the team are currently, you know, they are coming to work every day looking at how we can do better. We're on a continuous improvement journey here in submarines, right the way across our business from end to end. And supply chain is a significant contributor to that. You know, if you think of the overall cost of a submarine, our organization is responsible for more than 60% of the cost of that. So it's completely within our, you know, our interest to work better with suppliers, work more closely and make that relationship more easy. It's not going to be an easy activity, that's for sure. You know, the legislation and the processes and the requirements that are put around us in order to build such a complex product, and, you know, having a nuclear license doesn't make that easier, but I can assure you that we are doing our best to make it easy.
Thanks, Simon. And on that theme, one of a sort of similar supply chain question has been raised by Mark Brook, who is a key supplier to BAE, talking about how does the organisation work with businesses and suppliers to get a longer term position in terms of relationships, because clearly that will drive investment in new technologies, processes, and in turn improve productivity and value for the supply chain. So a longer term strategic relationship is really Mark's question.
Okay. One of the challenges we have is the way that we're funded, and, you know, the funding route that we have is going to be even more challenging on the back of, you know, UK PLC spending significant sums of money over the last 12 months in order to keep the entire population safe around the pandemic. But what we have recognised is that route to funding needs to be, you know, improved, and it needs to be more longer term in order for us to drive and develop those long-term strategic partnerships. It's something that we're working in collaboration with the Ministry of Defence, with the Treasury, and also with the Submarine Delivery Agency, is how can we develop those longer term partnerships and in turn secure longer term contracts with our suppliers. We do already have longer term partnerships on the back of the technology that we design and that we utilise within the submarine programme. However, those longer term contracts don't necessarily come with a longer term security of a contract and a you know, funding route. So it's something that we do need to work on. We are seeing advances in that relationship with the SDA, through the SDA into the Ministry and the Treasury. I think it's just one of those where we need to keep working through it. You know, we as a business ourselves are constantly challenged with the salami slicing and the funding approach with regards to the Ministry, and the Treasury have got huge amounts of other types of projects that they need to fund as well. So I think it's about working closely with your supplier leads, with those people within BAE Systems and within my team that are responsible for that relationship. And it's better to tell us where you have issues. It's better to raise those concerns. And at the same time as we're talking about finding solutions for those particular tactical issues, they then in turn develop into strategic discussions and strategic partnerships where we can work together in order to secure those long-term partnerships that we require and long-term routes to funding.
Lovely, thank you. And a couple of things that have come up on the theme of sustainability. One question around how are you looking at making the metal that you're using in manufacture more sustainable? And the other one relates to the business itself. So real plans to decarbonise BAE's operations.
Okay, so just regarding to the question of metal, I'm guessing it's referring to the steel, and there's a lot of discussion about the steel industry right now in the media. So we do have we do everything we can to maintain our supply base within the UK. Some of that is driven because of the security and the technology that we require within submarines. And our first requirement is to utilise both local and national industries and national businesses, and we want to support that. Unfortunately, in some instances, due to the technical requirements of the products that we buy and the raw materials that we need in order to develop those products, we might not necessarily be able to source within the UK. And we're constantly working with both the Ministry of Defence, but also with various other government agencies, and how we can continue to either introduce or sustain those longer term capabilities within the UK industry and the UK footprint. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to be able to have 100% UK sourced equipment and materials, because just the nature of what we do might not necessarily enable us to do that. But I can assure you that we do everything and we do our utmost. And I think that the figures that we have within our sustainability plan and the numbers today of more than 90% of our supplier requirements are in the UK today, and we want to keep that level and increase it. With regards to the second question around long-term sustainability, we're talking about sustainability with a big S and a capital S. It's how can we sustain the long-term partnerships with our supply chain, and that's by working a lot closer together with them. But we do have an overall objective from BAE Systems PLC to commit to the green agenda that's being pushed very hard. We've got our own commitments locally. It's quite a bit of a funny challenge for us, because ultimately we do have a nuclear reactor that we put into our submarines in order to supply them to the Royal Navy. But I can assure you we're doing everything. We have it's high on the agenda. One of my fellow board members is responsible for our sustainability program, and there is a huge amount of resources that have been piled into that, both within our sector, maritime and land, but also within the wider BAE Systems.
Lovely, thank you. And you've been on the back of your earlier responses, both Stuart and Graham have invited you to visit them and to also help you to explore some of the supply chain opportunities. I'm very conscious of time, Simon, and the need to move on. So really just like to change tack with two quick questions. First one is about collaboration, broader collaboration with other manufacturers, and whether there is potential to working together to establish a centre for manufacturing innovation was one part of the question. There was a separate question looking at the county's clean energy ambition, and given that basically you provide modular reactors on submarines, how are you working with the wider sector on wider clean energy in terms of sharing expertise? And then what I'd like you to leave with is a very different question, which is from Fiona Kane around working with special needs schools. Only 6% of young people with special needs are in employment. She's working with some fabulous young people with brilliant, unique skill sets and wants to engage with employers who are disability confident. Can you give us some advice in getting to work with BAE? So there's sort of two distinct questions to leave you with.
Right, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'm happy to accept any invite to visit suppliers. You know, my desire is that my team spends more than half of their time actually working with suppliers and visiting suppliers. So I'm hoping that they're going to be somewhere offshore so I can get on a plane and fly to sunnier climates, but they're probably not, knowing the footprint of our suppliers. So thanks for the invite. Please get in touch and I'll be happy to come along and visit you. So collaboration. So I think probably the two first questions roll into one about collaboration of manufacturing, but also about centres of innovation. So quite clearly, because of the skills and capabilities, and we are very committed to developing that both locally and regionally and in the country. You know, we're very interested in developing what we would call centres of excellence or centres of innovation. Certainly within the SSNR programme, which is the programme I alluded to during the introduction, was this is the programme which is going to replace the Astute programme, which we're currently manufacturing. That's going to take us beyond 2050. Now, they have a real significant strategy about developing, sort of in-house supplier capability, having suppliers being co-located with us here in Barrow and Furness, but also at our other sites, and really developing those centres of innovation, centres of excellence, where we can develop the skills and the capabilities and the knowledge as a collective, rather than it being a customer-supplier relationship. We want it to be a really coordinated approach to developing technology and skills and expertise. I think my battery is going to die any second, so I don't know where the plug socket is, so I'm going to have to be quick. With regards to our green energy program, yes, we're very focused on that. I know Steve Cole, who's one of my board colleagues, he works very closely with the local community in how we can drive those certain green agendas. I'd like to, if possible, because I know we're running out of time, is maybe we could take that away as an action and come back with some more details and share that with the wider community, just to give you that confidence that it's as high up on our agenda as everybody else's. And with regards to working with the local community, so please get in touch with me that is the answer, because we're doing so much with the local community. If there's a feeling that we're not targeting a specific area where there's a natural opportunity, then we are very keen to work with those communities, especially special needs. There's a lot of people that we do employ in our business that you could consider to be within that population, and we're hugely supportive of that, and we want to grow that opportunity of those people experiencing what it's like to work within BAE Systems, but also become a valuable member of the community and contribute in the same way that we all do. So, you know, very happy to talk about that offline as well.
Brilliant. Simon, thank you very much for your time. Really sorry that you can't stay for the panel session, but I hope your next meeting with one of your suppliers goes really well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye. Right. And this is decidedly one of those moments where it is, in terms of our speakers, last, but definitely not least. I am delighted to introduce Jane Morby. Jane is marketing manager from the Oxley Group. Jane's got more than 20 years experience in the industry as a marketing professional. She's been with Oxley since 2012 and has been heavily involved with business improvement, communication and engagement work. Jane sits, as we mentioned earlier, on the Made Smarter steering group, as well as alongside the Northern Powerhouse export leads across the region, is our very own export champion. We are very fortunate in Millet to have Jane actively involved in our business and economic response and recovery group, where she has done sterling work, not only for the sector, but for the whole of Cumbria, representing our interests at national events, defence committees, etc. So delighted to welcome Jane, whose contribution has been recognised by the manufacturer, who described her as one of the UK's 100 most influential people in the category of driver of cultural change. So Jane, delighted to have you with us, and over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Maisie, can you put up the first slide, please? Thank you. So I'm wanting to talk to you very much from a practical point of view as a Cumbrian SME. We're an aerospace and defence manufacturer based here in Ulverston. We have 180 employees on site, and we were founded back in 1942 by Freddie Oxley, who you can see here. And Freddie founded the business on 3 values. One was around family values, one around self-sufficiency. And Freddie believed that if we could do everything in-house here, we could be masters of our own destiny and we wouldn't need to rely on anybody else. And that's really something that's still a philosophy here today. And we operate a full turnkey solution from our site in Ulverston, from design, manufacture, test, and sending the products out around the world. And the other value was around innovation. Freddie was an absolute believer in innovation being at the heart of everything we do. And it's still one of our core values as a business today. Can you move me on, please, Maisie? So we manufacture LED lighting systems and electronic components, and we work with some of the world's biggest aerospace and defence companies. Next slide, please, Maisie. And I just wanted to talk to you a bit about where we're at now in 2021 in terms of the challenges we have in the business and the opportunities that we see when we're looking at manufacturing and where we go from here. So first of all, really, there's a big theme around COVID recovery. We've all lived through an exceptional year, and how do we come out of that year and move forward? Overlay onto that the impact of the EU exit transition that has impacted on so many manufacturers in so many different ways. The productivity challenge that Juergen talked about earlier this morning, how do we address that and stay competitive? Future skills, being based here in Cumbria, we all know that there is a future skills shortage. How do we work together to address that challenge? And then going back to the theme of productivity, how do we, as small businesses, adopt digitalization to stay competitive and grow? And how do we access some of the support around that? Next slide, please. So reflecting on the last year, we've been through an exceptional time working through COVID, going back a year from where we found ourselves in the first lockdown. And for us, it was very important that we stayed open as a defence manufacturer. And to do that, we had to work very closely with our team to keep people safe and well and coming into work. And we did that really through very much focusing on communication. So we did monthly life in lockdown surveys out to our workforce to find out how they were coping. And we built a whole new way of working based on social distancing and having a COVID secure site. We prioritised this 5 ways to wellbeing model, where we looked at what we could do to support people in terms of their health and safety on site and in terms of their well-being as well. We, as BAE did, and they've talked about earlier, we ran a PPE project, and we did some rapid manufacture of PPE that we then supplied out into the local NHS. And that project really galvanised our team behind us and what we were trying to achieve. And I think that enabled a different level of team spirit that has continued throughout the last year. So where we're at today, we've now got about half of our workforce on site and the other half working from home. That presents huge challenges to us. You know, we're finding that it's very easy to sort of keep the wheels turning, but it's quite difficult to do some of the business improvement work and some of the collaboration work that we want to do to move the business forward. So I think that's a big challenge for a lot of organisations. And we're also now facing a new problem in terms of the industry that we operate in. We operate in aerospace, and I'm sure everybody is well aware of the impact that COVID has had on some markets, and civil aerospace is one of them. Going back a year, we looked at a good, a bad and an ugly scenario, and we're now firmly in the ugly scenario. So we have got to be more competitive and more productive to maintain our turnover and maintain our profit. Amazing. Next slide, please. We're a big exporter. We export 82% of our product to 34 countries around the world. And EU exit has presented a huge challenge to us as an organisation. We were a best practice case study in terms of our preparedness, and we were as ready to go as we possibly could be on the 31st of December. So what have we seen since then? We've obviously seen some immediate impacts, particularly in customs delays of goods going in and out of the country. But the one thing that's really impacted on us quite unexpectedly is rules of origin. And we have 50,000 inventory parts, 18,000 sales parts, and we just weren't expecting the rules of origin to have the level of impact that it's potentially going to have on us as a business. So we're having to seek support to find out how we can deal with that, and we're having to look at it, you know, is there an opportunity around that we can harness? And moving forward, what potential opportunities does EU exit present to us? So we've got, is there an opportunity for innovation in terms of where we source some of our piece parts from? Is there an opportunity that we can look at some new markets? For example, there's a new free trade agreement with Japan that presents some really good opportunities to us that we need to look at. And looking at competitiveness, again, going back to this theme of how do we be cost efficient and how do we be as productive as we can to maintain our market share operating in this new environment. Maisie? So alongside that, we've got a big challenge around our people. And we've talked today and the other sessions about skills. Going back to 2018, we were in a position where we wanted to grow the business, but the business had become static and we had very much a silo culture. We had a lot of negativity, poor motivation and productivity in the workforce. And we had really ambitious growth targets. And we decided that if we were going to meet those ambitious targets, we had to create a cultural change in the business. So we started at that point by doing an employee engagement survey and took a really, really frank look at the business and what we were doing well and what we weren't. And what came out of that was a really clear understanding that we needed to make big improvements in 3 areas around recognition, communication, and personal development planning. So we started by launching a vision, mission, and values, and really buying the workforce into what we were trying to achieve as an organisation. Maisie? And since then, over the last 3 years, we've been on a big journey in terms of engaging our workforce. We set up a communications team, and the job of the communications team was around 2-way feedback. So it was to listen to what people in the business had to say and to respond to that. And within our first few weeks, we had about 100 items raised to our communications team. And that varied from very large suggestions about the direction of the business and how we could make improvements, through to very small things like, can you fix the window, or can we get a water cooler in this office? You know, but we prioritized them and we delivered them to show people that we were listening to what they had to say. We totally reviewed our employee proposition. our terms and conditions, and we put right all of the hygiene factors that people have been frustrated about, to take them away as issues. We prioritised recognising good behaviour and successes and training, and just a very simple thank you makes such a big difference. We've facilitated and funded team activities to try and get people involved in what's going on site, and to create some team spirit, which has been really a phenomenal success. And then finally, we trained all of our, well, a proportion of our workforce in business improvement MBQs. And we then set a framework and empowered people to go away and fix what was wrong in their area. So where we had people who had spent years moaning that things weren't right in their area, we gave them the tools and the framework to just go away and fix it. And we found that people then started to take responsibility for things that they'd always had problems with, and totally changed their mindset about delivering improvements. Next slide, please. The other thing that we've talked about is about future skills and about what we need to do collectively as a manufacturing sector in Cumbria to ensure that we have the skills that we need in the future. And there's lots of organisations working across the county to support that. And I would echo what Joe said earlier about working with the Careers Hub and supporting them in terms of the outreach work they're doing with young people. Here we've been involved in a lot of careers work to raise aspirations of young people. We heard from BAE that towns like Barrow have got some of the poorest wards in the country. It's about raising aspirations and creating opportunities for those young people, making sure that no young people are left behind and that everybody does have opportunities. We've done a lot of STEM outreach, and we have a big event here in Ulverston called UlverSTEM. And if there is any organisations out there that want to get involved in that, please drop us a line and we'd be delighted to tell you more about it. And particularly supporting young women into STEM roles, where we've got a big shortage. And we can map over the last 3 years as an SME, we've had 15,000 interactions with young people from Furness in raising aspirations, supporting them in STEM and supporting them in entrepreneurial projects, which is something we're really proud of. And it's got benefits of raising the profile of our organisation. And there's a massive sense of pride as well from our team that they're getting involved in projects like that. People enjoy doing it. And it feels like we're giving something back to this community that we've been embedded in for 80 years. And it's helping us to solve our long-term skills issue. Maisie? And I'd just like to touch on the results that we've had from some of this work. It's not really just about, the employee engagement work has not been about a nice to have. It's really been about delivering for our bottom line. We've had brilliant participation over the last 3 years. We've repeated our employee satisfaction survey on an annual basis, and every single marker has moved up. In 3 areas, we're scoring full marks. We've got really good focus and really good alignment. And so people understand what we're trying to achieve as a business, and they understand the role that they're playing in trying to achieve that. And it's paying off for us as well. Despite the circumstances of COVID and EU exit and the downturn in civil aerospace, we've recorded record turnover and we've increased our profit. Next slide, please. So just to finish, where do we see the future as an SME operating in Cumbria? We will continue with our business improvement programme, and we've got 6 projects that we're intending on rolling out over the next year. We're a big believer in sharing best practice, and I think this morning we've heard lots and lots of themes about collaboration, and here at Oxley we are collaborators, and we've worked with many other manufacturers in Cumbria, companies like TSP Engineering, James Walker, Playdale, Hawkshead Relish, Bender, Siemens, many organisations that don't operate in the same area as us, but that are manufacturers that can tell us things that they're doing, and we can show them things that we're doing. So there is an open opportunity for us to work together with anybody who feels that there's some value in doing that. And also an invitation if people want to come to Oxley and find out much more detail about our journey and the things that we're doing, please just get in touch with me, and when circumstances allow, we'd be delighted for you to come and visit us. There are big opportunities in export. We've gone through the EU exit transition, but there are new opportunities opening up, and we're looking at the moment at South America and Southeast Asia and opportunities there, and some big programs in countries like Japan. And the Department of International Trade give fantastic support, and we are very lucky here in Cumbria to have a really good ITA, Tiffany, and there is also Sarah, who is embedded in the LEP and is a great first point of contact if people are looking at starting their export journey. So get in touch and get some support. And finally, I couldn't finish without talking about digitalisation. We have got big plans in the next 18 months for a digitalisation programme here at Oxley. And as an SME, trying to start on their Industry 4.0 journey, you couldn't look for better support than Made Smarter. There's an opportunity there to access funding, to access advice, leadership support, potentially digital interns to come and work with you. And I would urge any SMEs that are thinking about how they achieve Industry 4.0 to make the call to Made Smarter and see, have that first conversation about where they can help. Thank you.
Jane, thank you. That's fabulous. As always, really great cover on some of the issues that you face in the business, and how, more importantly, how you've addressed them. And it brings us full circle, because the final point in Juergen's 4 themes was about leadership, culture and skills. And you really brought that to life as to what you've been doing in Oxley. Right, I'm now going to hand over to our chair, John Coughlin, who is going to convene the panel session. So before I leave, can I say a massive thank you to everyone for joining. We will be sending a survey out to everyone that's attended next week to ask what kind of events would be useful. And we'll also provide details of how to get in touch with us so that we can signpost you to whatever support you need, be it advice, be it finance, be it whatever else. So can I now pass back to John and our fabulous panel to answer your remaining questions. Thank you, John. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. One of the amazing things, I mean, this has been a really good session and a good day. I think a lot of the positive things about what we've been talking about, questions have been getting answered almost as quick as they've been asked in the question and answer stage. So I think people have been getting a lot of information and a lot of added value, I think, to today's session. But I suppose there's a lot of things that we need to look at in terms of manufacturing. A couple of things that came up this morning, and one of the things was around advanced manufacturing in relation to Made Smarter. And one of the questions was, is there a way, and maybe we can have a bit of a conversation with this, because I know some of the people on the panel have been involved. Is there a way to get different companies with different technologies collaborating together, so that, for instance, a company who's maybe operating in the food sector, who's very much into automated manufacturing processes, might be able to pass some of that information into the engineering sector and vice versa, so that we can cross-pollinate across industries and learn and get added value. Is that something somebody would like to take, maybe, Juergen?
Yes, certainly, and it's a really good and a really interesting question. And indeed, you know, when we set up Made Smarter, we very much presented it as a sort of a horizontal initiative across all manufacturing sectors, to support the more vertical oriented sector approach we often develop, you know, with obviously, you know, an aerospace sector council and an automotive one, etc. Interestingly, when we go out and then sort of look to work with companies, it's incredible how much companies like to stay within their sector. People in the food and drink sector like to learn and speak to people from within the food and drink sector, and the same goes for others. So a lot of this tends to be sort of industry pull, as opposed to Made Smarter push. But the question is a good one, and I think, you know, we need to encourage both the people from the pull end and you know, obviously advisors in Made Smarter, people in Catapult, to be able to create that sort of cross pollination. Because one thing is for sure, you know, you can't afford to do a bespoke Made Smarter scheme for each sector. You know, it would just be too costly to do it. So you have to try and standardize solutions to make them more cost effective, to make them quicker for companies across the sectors to pick them up. So yes, good. You know, it's a really good point. It's a good challenge, and I think from all sides we need to be more open-minded to it and make it work. Yeah, I'm sure Jane's got some thoughts on it from you, sort of working in, you know, within your, you know, view, particularly within aerospace and defence.
Yes, definitely. I think we've learned lots from other organisations. We've paired up with Hawkshead Relish, for example, and with Playdale, who manufacture playground equipment, completely different manufacturing processes, and we can still learn a lot from them in terms of programs like how we introduce visual management onto site, and how we can then we can work with people on how we can engage our workforce to improve productivity through things like visual management. We've also worked with other organisations, like there's the Cumbria Clock Company, who's accessed Made Smarter funding. And if you listen to their case study, it's all about a very traditional business that, like Oxley is, and how they have utilised technology and gone through the change journey in order to digitalise record keeping. And that applies to any organisation. It doesn't matter what sector you're working in. Things like sensor technology as well have got so many applications in so many different industries that we absolutely need to work across sector groups to make sure that we embed some of that learning and those good case studies across the region.
Very good. Thanks very much. I suppose in terms of those areas of technology that we can share, we're probably going to learn a lot from each other. And I think that there is a big openness within businesses in Cumbria to work together and to collaborate together. And I think that's one of the things that has made our businesses across many sectors successful. And I think that will carry on. There's an interesting question here regarding getting manufacturers and engineering back onto the curriculum within schools and in college. One of the questions is, how do we think we can actually stimulate getting engineering and manufacturing back onto the curriculum, and what can be done to ramp up applications to enter the sectors of engineering and manufacture to make it of real interest to young people?
Again, happy to make. I mean, it's a question that that many of us have been struggling with for some time. Again, I mean, the good news is that I think in the last decade, things have improved. There's been lots of initiatives driven by Engineering UK, by Make UK, initiatives like the Big Bang Fair, and I just encourage manufacturers to engage in those as much as possible and bring their case studies and their exciting stories out there, because it fascinates me. You know, it's so easy, I think, to make manufacturing exciting to young people. And, you know, when we talk about the dark old days of manufacturing, well, you know, young people today know nothing about those old dark days of manufacturing. So we don't even need to talk about it, you know. And when you talk about using virtual and augmented reality, and you talk about creating you know, digital twins of manufacturing processes and optimizing those, like we heard from the presentations earlier today from Daresbury. I mean, these are hugely interesting, exciting things to young people. It's just that you know, teachers struggle to talk about them, so we have to help, you know, bring those stories into schools, and there are, like I say, many initiatives to do that. And whenever we do it, I think we do excite them. And the other thing, of course, is another old chestnut, which is that, you know, for the last sort of 30 years, the UK has very much promoted its higher educational academic routes of education much greater than the technical vocational routes, and we still have a long way to go in terms of making both routes, you know, equal, and making both routes absolutely brilliant, which is very different to how it works in Germany. You know, in Germany, if you've got one child who is very academic and is going to go to Cambridge, and you've got another child who is very much into technical academic and is going to do an apprenticeship, a higher apprenticeship, you know, both is absolutely cool and brilliant. And here you tend to say, oh, well, you know, the one who's going to Cambridge is the smarter one. And we've just got to try and culturally change that.
Tom?
Thanks. Yeah, from a STFC perspective, so as Juergen mentioned, we've got lots of big facilities and interesting things that people can get hands-on with. And we do a lot of STEM work, science, technology, engineering and maths, engagements in local schools. And just being able to go into a local school and show people a robot, let them have a mess around with it, explain how the natural language processing works, or some kind of visualization, or even get them on site, breaks down the barriers. And then you can see in their heads, they start connecting up how they could, you know, build that into a potential career or a workplace opportunity. And then on the flip side of that, you've got, where I live in Bolsover, you've got lots of logistics-based jobs. There's a stigma around low pay, 0 hours contracts. But then if you get people inside those businesses where they're implementing automation and robotics, it changes perspectives again. And it's similar to the cross-domain stuff, really. You need to get challenges from these workplaces and present them more publicly, either, you know, across colleges and schools, but also across business sectors. The Digital Catapult does challenge-led things. We do stuff within different networks at STFC to try and get our science out there as well. And it applies to schools as much as it does to business in a way, about awareness raising.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that, please. I mean, there's another side to this which we're seeing in the space sector, and which if this can't be done, if the more traditional companies struggle to engage young people, the more young people will do it themselves and disrupt it and become competition that could potentially really make life difficult for you. If we look at what we call new space, this is SMEs and young people coming up with new ideas and completely changing the way things are done. So it's an opportunity to take hold of and to try and get that enthusiasm into the companies. And it is a challenge. And the problem is, if we don't try and tackle it, they will start biting heels from other directions.
Just a question, well, it sparks when you were talking there. how do we, or should we even be trying to develop strategies for what was I I've just lost the word for what I was going to use, for disruptive technologies. That's it. What do you think the appetite is for disruptive technologies to drive changes? Because that really will come from a lot of the younger people who are coming in with new ideas and new thoughts. How do we stimulate that sort of enthusiasm to drive simplification within industry and to drive major change, which would be hugely cost saving to businesses?
I think there's, you've got to be careful with the definition of disruptive. I think if you're a fairly traditional firm, disruptive is like, what does that mean? And I'll give you what I think is a great example of disruption. There's a company in Lancashire, and they do sports event photography. Right? People run a marathon, so they take pictures. And it takes like 2 days to get those pictures online. We help them integrate satellite communications. They now do it in real time. They're the only company in the world who can get those photographs online in real time. And it has absolutely disrupted the global industry. And that's by having something that has existed for 60 years. It's a technology that existed in another sector that no one was thinking of using. And that's how they applied it. So there's a communication over what we mean by disruption. And it doesn't mean stop everything, change everything, do it all again. It can be something very simple, like adopting a technology that you use in your house, but you're just not using in your firm.
Does anybody else on the panel like to come in?
Yeah, no, again, it's a really good question. I mean, I chair the Digital Catapult, which is all about so-called disruptive technologies, because Alan is right. I mean, some of these technologies have actually been around for quite a long time, but, and we're looking at bringing, 5G, machine learning, AI, augmented virtual reality, these sorts of technologies into manufacturing. And there's two sides to it. The one side is the disruptors that are bringing this technology, which are often the technology startups. They've got all the innovation and the enthusiasm and the excitement and everything we need in terms of bringing innovation, but they often struggle the link into the major corporates and how to make that entrance. And I think some of that came quite clear out of the BAE discussion we had today. Now, BAE is a particular interesting example because, I mean, everything in a submarines business is about the top end of excellence and is about critical safety. And therefore, to bring something, brand new, totally revolutionary and disruptive into that industry is actually going to be incredibly difficult. It has to have been commercially tested and trialed and done for a very long time. So that's probably not the first place to go. So and this is part of the education of, where do these disruptors go? Which industries can they work with? Where can they really test it, make it robust? And it's creating those networks. And in a nutshell, this is what organizations like the Digital Catapult and like the High Value Manufacturing Catapult and Daresbury that we're hearing from here today are designed to do, to help facilitate those connections and to help make sure that these disruptive technologies can be scaled up in a reliable and in a safe way.
I also think there's a connection there with the previous question. Very often these disruptive pathways and technologies come because there are, let's be honest, younger people in the business who've identified and are familiar with it and are using it. So I think, I think if you solve one problem, you'll probably be on a way to solving the other.
And I suppose another question that's been triggered is, do you think that there's a need for, or how do we go about developing the apprenticeship schemes to develop some of the apprenticeships into more areas of advanced manufacturing, not just the traditional apprenticeships that we have in manufacturing, but to get individuals into the system through an apprenticeship route rather than through a university route, where they can see the attractiveness of earning some money while they're learning and contributing at the same time.
I mean, the good news is they're happening. You know, Salford University is doing a degree apprenticeship in advanced manufacturing. You know, in Greater Manchester, Trafford College, Tameside College are both doing higher apprenticeships in advanced and even digital manufacturing. So it's happening. A lot of it is down to two things, and that is the demand generation. So, you know, companies have to work harder to work with local colleges and colleges to help create these sorts of things. If you're a small company, that's harder. So it's better to join in, you know, with your local LEP, such as this discussion here, to help design such courses. And the second thing, quite frankly, is what I said earlier, which is this culture thing, which is that we've all got to work as a nation to just hold apprenticeships up as a shining example of what we want our young people to aspire to, in the same way that we would want them to aspire to an academic qualification. So it's a cultural thing and it's an engagement thing. And I think we spend too much time knocking our education sector, who actually do a pretty damn good job if we create the demand for them.
Yeah.
Can I just add, John?
Yeah, Jen.
There's another project that we've just been looking at getting involved in, which is a skills bootcamp project, and it's a business-led project that's happening in Lancaster, and it's around electronics. And so this is a cluster of businesses working together to deliver a business-led skills bootcamp, very specifically looking at electronics, but that's the kind of model that we could use if we're getting together in business clusters to look at where the needs are in the county.
That's very good. One of the things that was mentioned earlier on with regard to young people was people with learning disabilities. How can we get businesses to see the value of taking people with sort of disabilities, not physically, but sort of with learning skills and requirements for learning skills development? I mean, I've had in previous companies where we've had some individuals like this who brought in, who changed the whole way of thinking, because once you're giving them the opportunity, they see things differently, they approach things differently, and it takes the company a huge leap forward. How can we get businesses to see and companies to see the real benefit to taking on people who may just have a small difference that can make a huge difference to a business?
Can I come in again on this?
Please,
one?
Yeah.
So we have got some work going on in the county on this very subject, which is being led by Dan Barton at Cumbria County Council. And he gave a presentation to the local enterprise, to the enterprise advisors that work from businesses within the schools in Cumbria, to talk about how we achieve this. And I know that a working group has been set up from businesses to look at the issue. So I think if there's businesses that are interested in getting involved in that, that's a very new project that's just been set up to look at exactly that.
And I think there's a wider statement here that it plugs into, yes, for the neurally atypical, but the business strength of inclusion and diversity in the workplace as well.
Yeah, and I mean, and from me, you know, when I was at Siemens, we did a lot of work on this, and what we realized is that there's a huge amount of unconscious bias built into your organization in all sorts of your processes. So, I mean, if I can just mention one, which is neurodiversity. You know, people who may have autism or various, you know, neurodiverse issues on that spectrum. And actually, these are people that we absolutely want to come and work in Daresbury and in our operations, because these are people who are brilliant at coding, at artificial intelligence, at all of these sorts of things. But when we looked at our recruitment processes, you know, the first thing you do is you say, can you please give us a 5-minute presentation? And, you know, and the last thing that a person from a neurodiverse background wants to do is to give a 5-minute presentation. It's not what their skill set is. So, you know, we had to learn how to adapt our our sort of recruitment processes, including making panels for recruitment more diverse themselves and understanding of these issues. So it really needs quite a detailed look at your unconscious bias. I'm not a believer that there's a huge amount of conscious bias. I mean, there is some, and there's another answer to that, but most of it is unconscious bias, and to remove that from your operation and to improve that inclusion, which, as has been commented, creates so much value into organizations.
So in looking at that, what sort of skills do you think that we're going to be needing for the future? To take us to the next level and the level after that, rather than just looking at one step ahead. What different skills, what different educational processes do we need to be looking at, and what things do we need to be encouraging the education system to start stimulating within its students?
From my experience going into schools, talking about artificial intelligence, it's always good to get onto the, we've got a Pepper robot, which is like a humanoid robot, and people can see the mathematics and the coding behind it, but they can also see that it's quite clunky and hard to relate with. And those kind of soft, artistic, somewhat skills are equally as important in some respects, especially as we're going to be interacting more and more with machines going forward. So we need a good mix of skills, and I think sometimes that's missed within the STEM. Some people change STEM into STEAM. The Digital Catapult in London have got a great set of facilities for interacting with AI and different technologies, and I think they're pushing well on that front as well. But I think that is quite often missed, and people are quite often jump at maths as a primary skill within our domain.
Alan, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't come from a standard background. I trained as an actor, and people still give me money to sing with a big band. So there are different skills drifting about in there. It's how you use them. I think you're absolutely right. The added art into STEM is incredibly useful. But also, let's not forget that young people have to understand, and I think this is especially prevalent in Cumbria, is that young people have to understand that the jobs are where they are. And we've seen this with the space sector. When I talk to young people about jobs, they think it's something in America. They don't realize that more satellites are built in Glasgow than anywhere else on Earth. They don't know that we're building air-breathing rocket engines down the road. And so helping them understand what the businesses do and what is available to them, that also helps them to decide and to pick those skills as they're coming through.
Apologies, Chair. I said I was responsible for housekeeping, and I've been sent in as the killjoy to say that we have run over time. So can I invite you to close us off, please, Chair?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to thank everybody for the time coming today, and also the members of the panel. It's been a really, really interesting and insightful conversation that we've had and sharing of ideas during the day. I think everybody enjoyed it. The questions that were coming through, the information that people were looking to extract from today, I think a lot of the questions have been answered. And I think that there is a real appetite now going forward from where we are now to move our manufacturing operation across the county in a major forward step. And one of the things that I like about a lot of the businesses within Cumbria is we do collaborate together, and we're not afraid to approach one another, even if we're from within different sectors. And I hope that continues, and that people feel that they can ask other companies and other businesses across the county, even if they don't know them all that well. You can approach them. They will help you, because by helping you answer some of the questions that they may have even thought or hadn't thought about at all. So let's carry this on into the future. And I would like to thank each of the members of the panel for their excellent contributions today. So thank you very much. Joe, I'll leave it to you to close up and say goodbye.
Chair, you've already done everything. Thank you, everyone. Delighted as always. We really, really do appreciate you joining us. And within the chat, I've sent the follow-up arrangements. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.